Ready to elevate your credit understanding and score? With insider tips and a plan, you can take action to improving your score, which can save thousands in unnecessary finance charges. Let's tackle today's topic with your coach, Credit Kristi.
Hey friends, it's Kristi, your credit coach. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode. I'm actually re-recording one of my very first episodes that I had recorded when I started this podcast back in 2020. And although it was one of my very early on episodes, this one gets the most listened to's still week after week. And it's called, How Hard Are You Willing to Work? And what took me by surprise is how many people have been listening to that. I felt like the title of it would have been a little off-putting, but it actually seems to attract more listen-tos. But if I could be really honest, being that it was one of my very first episodes, you can hear the fear in my voice. There were a lot of long, awkward pauses. I started saying something and then started on a different sentence and never edited out that piece. So in an imperfect attempt to be a little closer to perfect, I'm going to re-record it and share it with you. So if you've listened to any of my other episodes, you know I have spoken to literally thousands of people about their credit scenario, about their overall financial situation. I get to see an aspect of somebody's finances that even financial advisors don't get to see. So I'm looking at bank statements and where their money is flowing to. I look at credit history, and credit reports can have a trended credit report, which means I can see how much you're paying every month and how much of a balance you're accruing on your credit cards. So not only that you're paying your monthly payment, but how much are you paying? I get to see people's incomes and their saving amounts and this holistic picture, even before we get to talk about somebody's financial goals when it comes to home ownership and buying their largest asset life to date. But I also get introduced to a lot of people who really need some help and direction on their credit. So if that's you, if you want to know how hard are you willing to work and get a little tough love, then this episode is for you. So I want to begin by saying, if you start to improve your credit score now, it can literally save you tens of thousands of dollars over the years. The reason that lenders even use a credit profile and credit scores is it is a good indicator on your ability to borrow money and pay it back on time. And the lower the credit score, the greater the risk it is to loan money to you. And I know that sounds harsh, but that's the reality of it. So if you're a greater risk, there needs to be a greater reward for the lender who's going to offer that loan. And usually that means a higher interest rate because of that lower credit score. So if we can create a positive impact on your credit rating, your personal credit score, you can get better interest rates on credit cards, on home loans, on auto loans, and save you tens of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. So unfortunately, a lot of us have some banged up credit from the past. Maybe it was because of poor choices. Maybe it was a lack of understanding, how credit works, how money works. Maybe it was just due to simply a missed payment and then it just kind of snowballed into something bigger. Maybe you're shopping too much or you just don't have boundaries set or a budget created. It's time to take charge and be in control. So most people don't make changes until they're forced to. Think about it. Most people don't go on a diet and hit the gym until they find themselves 30 pounds overweight. Most people don't care about their credit until they go to apply for a loan and get turned down, or start thinking about buying a home and realize very quickly your credit score and your profile is the very first thing that a lender is looking at. So I say all of this because I can't care more about your credit than you do. So if you care about what's going on, then let's keep going. I hear so many people say, I'm working on my credit. And if you couldn't hear the quotation marks there, I'm air quoting, working on my credit. But what does that mean? To a lot of people, that means I've stopped making bad choices, but I'm not doing anything about the poor choices of my past. For some people, they've hired a credit repair company. And for others, maybe that means they're disputing everything on their credit report in hopes of seeing that score increase. So let's see what it will take for you to get out of your current situation. Because if you don't make any changes now, you're going to find yourself in the same exact place in 1 year, in 3 years, or even 5 years from right now. So just be careful who you listen to, because there's a lot of people out there that love to share their opinion. But if they are not an expert in that realm, if they don't know what works, following their advice might get you in trouble. So I think where we need to start is your beliefs about money. Like it or not, we all have a relationship with money. The crazy thing is most of us have never questioned this relationship in our lifetime. And you can't make a positive impact on something that you don't even know is a belief at all. You may have experienced your parents just swiping credit cards or fighting over money. You may have felt that you were really rich and turned out y'all were broke. You may have felt really poor and turns out your family is quite wealthy. Your environment and your experience in your childhood really shapes what your beliefs and your actions result in as an adult. Sometimes we may follow some behaviors that got us through that moment, but it may have not been the best choice to go by. And just keep in mind, our brains are wired to keep us safe and secure. So if it worked in the past, that might be a good indicator that it could work again in the future. But this is where your mind is playing tricks on you, because just because it's worked in the past doesn't mean it's the best way to move forward. So if you experience more month than there is money, this feeling, I know, creates a lot of fear and anxiety and probably feelings that keep you up at night. And I've gone through every one of those. I absolutely understand that money problems can often make us physically ill when what we're really seeking is to feel free and secure. So what are your beliefs about money? For some people, they believe money is the root of all evil. And for some people, money is this eluding thing that never stays in our hands or our bank accounts long enough. So very first thing we've got to do is understand our beliefs about money and realize that that's probably somebody else's belief. I know a lot of the things that I believed to be true growing up were my parents' beliefs and not mine. So what is it that you believe to be true about money? And consider that this belief may not be serving you well. If you believe money is the root of all evil, you might be pushing money out of your sphere and out of your life, because whatever you believe, your mind will prove yourself right. Once you understand your beliefs about money, the next step is to create a budget. For some of you, I know that this feels like a 4-letter word, but I'm telling you, it is not keeping you captive. It is not keeping you tiny. It is actually creating huge power for you because you're telling your money where to go. If you look at the amount of income you bring home and you list out all of your expenses, you might find your expenses exceed your take-home pay. And if that's the case, you're in good company. There are so many people that unfortunately survive the month because they put things on credit cards. But you guys, that's why the average American that carries a credit card balance owes thousands and thousands of dollars. That interest rate is about to go up, which means a higher payment, which means a bigger squeeze on your budget. On-time payments are the number one thing you can do for your credit rating. So at all costs, make sure that you are keeping on time with your monthly payments for those things that report to your credit report. So student loans, auto loan, and credit cards. Your payment history creates 35% of that overall algorithm that makes up your credit score. And this is the number one thing you can control the best, the easiest, is making on-time payments. The next most important thing is your utilization of your credit cards. You want to keep those balances 30% or below of what your limit is. And it honestly wouldn't surprise me if in the coming months we see some credit card companies reducing the limit that they have extended to you. If you have recent collections, I'm saying like less than a year old, get those babies paid off. Pay it in full, settle if they'll allow you to, make a payment plan, but get that gone. If somebody owed you money, you would want them to make it right. So if you truly owe, create a payment plan with them. If it's truly an erroneous collection, it's just not yours and you know it and you can prove it, dispute that. Not only with that creditor, but also with all 3 credit reporting bureaus. Now, a dispute is temporary, all right? So if we're gonna start talking about working on credit, we can actually use personal hygiene as a really great analogy here. And a dispute is temporary. Think like body spray or cologne or deodorant. It only works for a little while, right? And in this case, a dispute will temporarily help your credit score, but the credit reporting bureaus will respond back to you within 30 days of that dispute. And if they find that that collection or whatever it is that you're disputing is accurate, they'll remove that dispute and it will now be labeled that it was in dispute. So if the collection is older than a year, that's where the advice gets a little bit gray because it's different for every person. Sometimes paying off an older collection can hurt your score more than it could help it because the older a collection gets, the less it hurts your overall profile. Now, if it's a charge-off, charge-offs and collections will stay on your credit report for 7 years from the date of last activity, but a charge-off typically hurts your credit score and overall profile much more than just a collection if it was a credit card. And that's because it's going to still report as a charge-off, but as a revolving. And a revolving is how a credit card is labeled. So now you have this negative amount against a zero limit because you no longer have a limit with a card that has been closed and put in a derogatory status. So charge-offs can give you a double whammy. So we've talked about collections and charge-offs. We've talked about getting down that debt utilization on your credit cards because that hurts your credit profile if it's an overutilization of credit. And we also know late payments is the worst thing that you can do. Well, what about a repossession? I've seen a lot of people, unfortunately, with a repossessed car. And sometimes the explanation is like this. Well, it was a voluntary repossession. And yes, it will be reported as voluntary repossession as opposed to just repossession or involuntary repossession, but the negative impact to your credit score is going to be about the same. When you go to apply for a loan, the underwriter or that decision maker for approving that loan may see a voluntary surrender or voluntary repossession. And where that's going to help you is that you actually reached out to your lender and made some kind of an arrangement because you found yourself in a position that you could no longer sustain those payments. So it's a negative because you didn't follow through with your financial agreement to borrow this money and to pay it back on time. But what you did do was communicate with your lender. So in their eyes, you may look a little less riskier. Also, keep an eye on your mail that gets delivered to your home. I've seen a lot of people just overlook an old cable bill or a prior utility bill when you've moved, and that can turn into a nasty collection. It could just be this tiny little bill that after late fees and any additional fees added could turn into hundreds of dollars and a new collection against you. I am going to recommend sign up for Credit Karma, but please be careful. Credit Karma sends you notifications if somebody pulls your credit, if an account got closed, if there was a material change to your credit report, and they'll also notify you if there's a big swing in your credit scores. So it's interesting to keep eye on that. It's definitely not a credit monitoring company, but it is free. It does need to come with a warning label though, because Credit Karma is in the business of selling you on wanting to apply for a credit card. And now they have all sorts of other kinds of accounts to open on your behalf as well. So be careful because it can be a trap and get you clicking on applying for credit cards. And they make it super easy because they know all of your information about you already. Now, if you find yourself that you are maxed out on credit cards, there's more month than there is money, and you need to get out from some of this debt because it's just strangling you. Here's a couple of suggestions. You could do what I did and go get yourself a second job. I know the idea of working extra days and extra hours isn't really exciting, but keep in mind it's temporary. When I made the decision to finally get out of credit card debt and start saving for my home, I went and got a job at the mall selling jewelry on the weekends and a couple evenings a week. And you guys, retail hours can be tough, right? Especially when you tack that on to working 8 hours in an office every weekday. But I kept reminding myself of my bigger goal and that it was temporary. See where you can cut costs. I know this sounds obvious, but like the cable bill, you can shop for insurance, you can bring your lunch or have happy hour in. If you get a tax refund, you can use that money to pay off debt. You could rent out a room to somebody you trust. I know when we travel, we pay somebody to stay at our home with our dogs, and she's making quite a good side hustle doing that for a few people. And make sure that if there is negative credit that we need to overcome, that you are acquiring positive credit trade lines moving forward. So don't go and apply for too many store credit cards. My mom taught me a really great lesson when I was turning 18, and my friend went and got a department store credit card. And I told my mom I was going to apply there as well. And she said, "No, you're not." And with sad eyes, I'm like, but. And she said, "Is there anything in that store that is a need?" And I couldn't answer that question quickly, which gave me my answer. And so she said, "Get a credit card with someplace that's a need." And so I actually went to Target, got my very first credit card. I think they gave me a credit line of like $300. Thank you, Target, for the trust. But you know, a girl's got to have toothpaste and toilet paper. So it was a great lesson on how to build credit appropriately. Get a card that can be used anywhere, or if you need to start with a store credit card, start with a store that you could buy your necessities from, not just filling up a cart with wants. You can become an authorized user on somebody else's credit card. The goal is for longevity, so at least 5 years worth of credit history, and it's best to have it be a bank-issued credit card as opposed to a store credit card. High limit, low balance, add you as an authorized user. So a really nice balanced credit profile is to have at least one credit card, bank-issued credit card, and at least one installment loan. So if you are working on your credit, remember that there's maintenance. If we were going to compare this to maintenance on our bodies, we bathe, we get our haircuts, we shave. So that's equivalent to making your payments on time and maintaining your obligation of borrowing that money, paying it back. But even bigger than that is your mindset about money. When an organization extends credit to you, we have to honor this as a gift. They're trusting you and your commitment, your word that says you'll pay it back and you'll pay it back on time. And listen, life happens. I get it, but communicate. If you wind up finding yourself getting behind on payments or unable to make a future payment, reach out to that creditor and explain your situation. A lot of times, if you find yourself in a predicament, they'll give you a little leeway. They'll give you a temporary pause on payments, but it has to be agreed upon. And it starts with communication. And if you find that you're getting squeezed, that you have no margin, no extra money for anything other than just getting by, to make some changes in your life. It sounds like you might be financing your lifestyle. So we need to reduce expenses or increase income. And you can create cash flow a number of different ways. You don't have to go get a second job. If you have a room to rent out, if you can create a side hustle with a hobby you love, look inside your personal gifts and how can you bless the world with it and also make a little extra money. So how hard are you willing to work? Some of life's greatest experiences require some work to get there. And I want you to feel so fulfilled in your life, not worrying about how you're going to pay your bills. So it starts with understanding your beliefs about money, managing your credit, and seeing where your take-home pay is going so that you can direct it better. So if you've made it this far in my episode, I would love to hear from you. I'm in the process of writing a book about finance, money, and credit. And if there's something that you think is so imperative for this next generation to know, I'd love to hear from you. If you have a question you'd love to have answered, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email at questions@creditkristi.com. And until next time, my friends, stay well.